Because of Star Wars Acolyte, we're learning more about how it works behind the scenes when it comes to a Disney Plus TV show. But this reveal might actually be the smallest but biggest reveal. Welcome to Star Wars Uplink. Star Wars Acolyte is such an incredible case study on how large corporations basically corrupt good storytellers. And I say this in the nicest way possible to everyone involved because I know that they did not want to just put anything out there that they weren't proud of, and they worked the best that they could to get something made. And just having even a crappy TV show or movie is still impressive to get out there. There's the quote, no one actually wants to make a crappy movie. I will say there are asterisks to that, or crappy TV show, because there's some movies that you very clearly see are made just to be put out there. But those who are involved with a specific project more than likely do not want to make something that would be perceived as low effort or crappy. Star Wars Acolyte, I think, is this really fascinating thing because you have some incredible storytellers, some incredible directors, and everyone involved has done something very impressive in the past. Russian Doll was an incredible piece of storytelling. You have some fantastic directors as well that are getting tagged in for these projects. And before all of the actual episodes came out, I was incredibly hyped. Now that it is out, it seems like there were more chefs in the kitchen than I think we all expected there to be. And now we have a little bit of added spice on top when it comes to how this show is actually pitched and how it's processed behind the scenes. Episode 4 of Star Wars The Acolyte ended on one of the worst cliffhangers I've experienced on a TV show, honestly. It wasn't well paced. It wasn't built up to where it was clearly a cliffhanger, and apparently it's not the writer's fault. It's not anything like that. It is Lucasfilm / Disney's hands that are getting the pot all muddy and dirty. One of the co-writers for this project, Claire Keischel, or CK as she likes to be called on Twitter, who is someone who's written some incredible things like House of the Dragon, The OA, Watchmen, and is working on stuff like Blade Runner 2099. So she has a clear example of great storytelling throughout the years. And on Twitter, she replied to a couple fans around the process of writing this specific episode and just a little bit like peel the curtain back. One of the things she was asked is, why is this episode in particular so short, and why are generally the episodes for Acolyte so short? I think this is a question that we've all had for years around the various length decisions when you can, with the rise of streaming, not tie yourself to, okay, it has to be 24 minutes of content because we have to have 6 minutes of ads or whatever that ratio is on TV. You're now able to have much more fleshed out or very specific lengths of episodes. You can just say, I'm going to make a 17-minute episode, and the next week it's going to be 70 minutes, and the week after that it's going to be 4 minutes, or like, this is the ability that they have now, but it doesn't really seem like that. Someone on Twitter asked and said, hey, I hope I don't sound rude, but if I may ask, are they mandating y'all to keep episodes short? Wish they were longer like other streamers. And CK replies, we wrote this one and next week's together, and they kind of had a total ballpark limit for both. For reasons, next week's had to be the longer one, so this one we had to keep short. This is something that I'm personally not a fan of. I think they should be much closer tied to the actual release and how these things are done. As we saw here, it was very jarring to just cut an episode in the middle. And this was another thing that she was asked. She was asked, I like the episode until the ending, very unnatural cutoff point. And CK replies, I know, it's a killer, but that was the most natural place to end. You'll see when next week's episode comes out. I feel a lot of this disappointment could actually have been solved if they just put part 1 on this episode. This is something that they don't necessarily really do with the live-action TV shows. The live-action TV shows clearly are written in one long script, and then they are broken apart. And they don't have this whole clear structure in terms of, okay, here's the whole episode arc, here is the middle, the beginning, the end, all those things, and here's the story structure that we need to follow here. It doesn't seem like they do that. They just make one long story, and that is why certain episodes may have uninspired or unsatisfying conclusions, or maybe not even conclusions, as we're seeing in this specific episode. And I think this is clear with this specific episode. I think this show in particular, I don't think a show has been more clear in Disney Plus Star Wars than Star Wars Acolyte in terms of how something works when you pitch something to Disney and Lucasfilm. And I think this is going to be a big hindrance. We've seen a lot of people talk about the Dave Filoni review structure that is now in place at Disney. Dave Filoni is great and was a protege of George Lucas, but George Lucas was the creator of Star Wars. Dave Filoni is someone who just learned from him. And I think that Dave Filoni's preferences in Star Wars are more about tying it together on the lore side of things rather than actually, telling stories. His passion is around Star Wars. His passion isn't around the storytelling. At least from what we've seen so far, he's much more character motivated than what we've seen in the past, I believe. George Lucas went into Star Wars to tell this story. He didn't go into Star Wars to flesh out a world. And I think that's the key differential between George Lucas and Dave Filoni. And now that we're seeing these levels of approvals, these levels of decisions that are being made outside of the creatives that are writing these things, I think that is where a lot of the problems with Star Wars Acolyte come from. And I think this is a terrible decision to go in and say, hey, this script that you guys have, sweet, yeah. This episode that you've got here, that would be like a normal episode on Netflix or on HBO. We're actually going to cut that in half and make a really short, weird episode, and then make a kind of long episode compared to the other episodes. We're seeing an identity crisis with Star Wars right now with Star Wars Acolyte. It's like, on the one hand, we want to tell an interesting story. On the other hand, more importantly, it seems, we want to flesh out the world. We want new opportunities for us to do things later. This is just a stepping stone. This is just a piece of the puzzle that we're going to build on to later. It's not very important how it gets set up with this specific show. It's more important that all these things are in that show, and then we'll focus on the story. Because everyone involved, everyone, and I include all of the people at Lucasfilm and Disney, they all have their own priorities. They're all good at their jobs, but when they come together, I think the priorities get a little mixed up. In my personal opinion, I think they're focusing on the wrong things with Star Wars Acolyte. Beforehand, with all the leaks and everything, it seemed like they were going into a story to tell a story. And now that we see that, it's been revealed to be just a vehicle for Star Wars The High Republic era. And it's really disappointing because everyone involved is incredible at what they do. So it's kind of a shame that these are the decisions that are being made. I'm still going to watch the show because there are things that I enjoy about the show. I just think the execution and the story that they're trying to tell is just not there. It's not to the quality that I've come to expect or want from Star Wars. Star Wars is an incredible canvas to write a story on top of, and I think they missed the mark with this one. Still stuff that I enjoy, and I still enjoy breaking it down because it's an incredible learning experience to see story structure and break that down. I think there's some interesting things going on in that direction. Mostly from learning from failure, but there's some gems in there. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Check out our podcast, and may the Force be with you.